of 3 industry sessions at the 15th Annual Canada's Top 10 Film Festival. Our next session is co-presented by the Directors Guild of Canada and explores the changes that have been happening in genre films as the lines blur and filmmakers continue to evolve and challenge the status quo. I'd like to first introduce Rob King, Chair of the National Directors Division at the DGC, to give a brief welcome. So let's welcome Rob.
Hello. Hello. When we think about the big picture at the National Directors Division, often ask ourselves, how can we get more of our filmmakers on podiums and on screens around the world? And practically speaking, we do a number of things to try to solve that riddle. No one thing will fix it, we know that. But typically, for instance, we go to Ottawa and talk to high-ranking officials in the cultural ministry. This last year, we sent director members across the country to town hall meetings to talk about their careers and the importance of filmmaking in the Canadian cultural landscape. And we often become involved in promoting the work of our own members in cities across the country or participating in workshops and panel discussions. In Toronto, we often do that with TIFF. It's a relationship we're thrilled about. Personally, I think if we're going to succeed, we're going to have to stay true to ourselves and be original and convince a lot of people that is worth supporting and encouraging from now till eternity, not just in the short term or through one political reign or 4 years of one CRTC committee. Anyhow, having said that, this session today sounds like a kind of a very Canadian thing, genre bending. Finding new ways to be novel and original. So on behalf of the DGC, I would like to welcome you, and I hope you have a stimulating time while you're here. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Rob. And now I'd like to introduce Colin Geddes, our TIFF programmer and one of our genre masters, who will be hosting our set of panelists, and he'll do the introduction. So I will turn the floor over to Colin.
Good afternoon. So, Canadian filmmakers continue to evolve and challenge the status quo of genre filmmaking, expanding the conversation by cleverly blending different visual styles, aesthetics, and tropes while paying homage to traditional genre elements, altogether crafting a uniquely eerie, horrific, humorous, shocking mode of expression that leaves audiences wanting more. And these are films that travel, let me tell you. This panel explores why and how such an approach to filmmaking works and what implications come out of daring expectations. And we've got an interesting group of filmmakers who work in various aspects of the genre. So first off, I'd like to introduce to you Nick DENBOER, who's a visual artist, animator, editor, director, music composer, and remixer from Toronto. So he spent the last couple of years writing, directing, and producing comedy bits for Conan O'Brien. His work is a special brand of comedy filled with visual effects and editing trickery. And a lot of his success comes from viral stuff, which has just kind of popped up onto the web. If you want to see more of his work, if you've got your smartphones on you right now, do a search for Smearballs, okay? Find the Smearballs YouTube channel. This year, Nick co-directed and crafted, along with Davey Forrest, a film called The Chickening, which was a short film, poultry-infused remix of The Shining, which premiered at Midnight Madness, and is going to be, since Midnight Madness, it went on to all kinds of other festivals, and next week he's going to be at Sundance. Stephen McCarthy is an actor, director, and musician. In film and television, he's played a wide variety of leading roles for directors ranging from Guillermo del Toro with The Strain to Kate Melville for Picture Day. O Negative, which he wrote, directed, and performs in and produced, is his first film and was selected last year at TIFF. Laura Perlmutter is an award-winning film, television, digital media producer who co-founded First Love Films with Andrew Nicholas McCain Smith. She's produced 2 features, Don't Get Killed in Alaska and A Trip to the Island, not genre works, but recently she launched the fantasy multi-platform series Riftworld Chronicles on CBC in Canada and on Con TV in the US. And then, far-flung from Vancouver, we have the Soska sisters. Sylvia and Jen broke into the scene with their DIY indie sensation Dead Hooker in a Trunk, followed up by their breakthrough work American Mary, which starred horror icon Catherine Isabelle, and which struck with the strong Canadian horror trope of body horror. Currently, they're the directors, producers, writers, and hosts of a new U.S. game show called Hellevator. Okay.
Two people got that joke. Thank you, both of you.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by asking a couple of different questions about your works, and I'm going to start with Laura. What's multi-platform? Okay, you've made Riftworld Chronicles. Do you want to explain a little bit on what Riftworld Chronicles is, the premise of it, and then what is multi-platform?
Yeah, good question.
And full disclosure, we share an office, so I know way too much about Riftworld.
Colin saw the whole development of it and us stressing about it and everything. But Riftworld Chronicles is a sci-fi rom-com web series currently. It's on CBC's Punchline and Con TV in the States. And it's starring Tamo Pennicott from Battlestar Galactica, if we have any Battlestar Supernatural fans.
What's the log line?
Huh?
What's the log line? Pitch it.
It's a wizard from another dimension who ends up in our world trying to find his way home and meets up with a jaded journalist who he has to try and convince that what he's saying is true. And that's Kim. Kim is a jaded journalist, Aaron Karplek, a beloved Canadian actor. So we launched that on CBC, and then we also have a lot of plans for it. So multi-platform is that we are have funding right now to develop it into a video game. We're working on a comic book for it, as well as a TV series. So we're kind of looking at a way of telling a story in multiple platforms. Is really kind of simple in that way. So we're really excited about it and nervous about it. And Colin's seen all of those different emotions that we've gone through with it.
I was there when they successfully hit their Kickstarter goal, which was a glorious day. But can you talk about what was the kind of the inspiration impetus for it? Because it came from a short film, which is essentially was it intended to be a proof of concept? Because it's really exploded and blown up.
Yeah. So Jonathan Williams, the writer-creator, came to us with an idea that he had, which we thought was hilarious and great, and we applied to Bravo Fact for their funding, and were successful in getting it. And we made this short film, and we kind of knew we knew that we loved the idea, and we knew that we thought it was great and funny and lovable, but we didn't quite know how audiences would react to it. And when we launched that short film, it did amazingly well because of our stars, because of the content. And because of that, it launched something that we hadn't really experienced before, which was fan adulation. And that was, it felt good. I'm not going to lie, it felt really good. And because of that, we had previously, when we did the short, thought about doing a feature for it, but hadn't quite thought about a web series. But while we were looking at how the short did, we thought maybe this works as short installments of storytelling, and that might be a more successful way of expressing ourselves than doing it as a feature where we might not get the funding to do something epic that we'd want to do, being slightly new to the industry, especially Jonathan. So that's when we started looking at funding for web series, and we went to IPF and got that, and then went to CBC, got that, and found these partners that kind of allowed us to expand the storytelling that we were really excited about. And that's the kind of generation of how it, or the origin story of it.
Stephen, I want to talk to you about your short film, O Negative. So it's for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a kind of a very beautiful little love story about a vampire and her dependent. But it's incredibly stark. It's set in the middle of Canadian winter, and this was your first film. Can you talk about the inspiration for it, and was this intended as a proof of concept to maybe go to something bigger?
It was a proof of concept to myself that I could make a film. That was my concept. Well, first it was an experiment to see if I could write something, and then as soon as I wrote it, I I thought to myself, okay, I'm making this right away just to see if it's possible. And I started asking everyone I knew who had done it kind of guerrilla style and had coffee with everyone who would talk to me and what's a budget, just ask the questions, how, what happens, like it's, yeah. I had produced theater, and I had run a 10-piece rock and roll band for a long time. So I was used to sort of leading groups of people, but this was, the origin story of that goes back a year. My girlfriend, who is here, Alex, who plays the vampire, we had gone to see Fright Night at the Review, because she loves vampire movies, and so I was showing her this old school 80s funny movie. And then we went to the local on Roncesvalles, and I looked at her and I was like, someone should put you in a vampire movie. And that joke, in a strange way, just stayed with us. And we kind of talked about what their relationship might be and what echoes of our relationship might be involved, and saying too much. And then a year later, I found myself in a place where I just felt a bit discouraged with the opportunities that were being presented to me, and I had just finished filming a feature film in which I was one of the actors, one of the leads, and I thought to myself, I got to try this, I got to do it, and that was it. So a few people said yes. My friend allowed me to come and live at his house in Northern Ontario, where he has his wife and his 3 kids, and we brought up like a skeleton crew of Cabot McNenly, who is responsible for making it as beautiful as you describe, said yes. He's been my friend for years. And then it went all the way through to Stéphane Lafleur, who has been my pal for a long time, who's an editor, edited Monsieur Lazare, has had many films at Cannes and the festival. He completed it, so it was a lot of long relationships that led to it being as more than I ever thought it would be, which was just an experiment to see if I could finish and make a film at first.
And do you want to continue working in genre?
I think what surprised me about it is that genre for me, I never said, I love all sorts of movies. I wouldn't say I'm a kind of like, this is my first year of going to Toronto After Dark, and because it was my movie was there. It's not something I sought out, but funnily enough, the mask of genre, putting on trying to make a vampire movie, because there's like a swing set to hang on, there's a bit of rules and games you can play, and sort of preconceived decisions that are already made between you and the audience. And so I think it allowed me to express stuff about my own self that I didn't know I was even trying to write. And probably if I had set out to write a serious movie about, getting older or the feeling of dependency in love and the feeling of kind of needing someone so much that you would feed them your own blood, those ideas, addiction, I probably wouldn't have been able to make the movie because I would have been too scared. And in a way, this movie has now attracted some attention, and I'm sort of running with the energy that's coming back from people with it, and trying to expand it into a feature right now. Yeah.
Now, Nick, you're a bit of an outsider because you weren't necessarily making genre films. You were making more kind of like YouTube sketches and things for Conan O'Brien. How did you wind up with The Shining?
Through working for Conan, I kind of had an opportunity to pitch something to Warner Brothers. So my film, The Chickening, was kind of a pitch piece where we were going to try and get Warner Brothers to give us their classic films and let us kind of ruin them or just, or turn them into something new. So I teamed up with my pal, Davey Force, who's a LA animator. He did a lot of work on stuff like Tim and Eric, and he's a really talented dude. So we kind of hooked up, and we've been talking about doing this for, 7 years, like taking these big films and doing like a really heavy next level remix with them. So we kind of hunkered down for like a month and a half, 2 months, and went to town on The Shining, because when we were approaching Warner Brothers, we were like, okay, what kind of films do they have? And looked on Wikipedia at their list, and The Shining just kind of jumps out as like that, ultimate film to kind of mess with. And we started talking about it, and I don't know how chickens kind of got in the mix. I've talked about this before. It's probably because I grew up on a chicken farm and worked in a chicken butcher shop for many years, but it's kind of ingrained in there. So we kind of made the piece, and then Colin got his hands on it, and it went from being a proof of concept to a film all of a sudden. And then after that, he put it in TIFF in Midnight Madness, where it got great reviews and great reaction. And since then, it's been a ton of other festivals. And yeah, and hopefully it has helped now get Warner Brothers to give us more of their properties. I have some meetings coming up, and it might not be something as big as The Shining, but we're hoping they're going to give us something cool to take it to the next level.
Can you talk about how the fans kind of how they reacted? I mean, in some people's eyes, you've kind of bastardized a classic.
Yeah, I mean, we like to think that we, still kind of paid homage to the original film and complimented it and made something new. Like, we're not just, our goal wasn't to like make fun of The Shining or lessen The Shining in any way. It's kind of like we're building on it. Like, we used it as a skeleton and we added to it. So I think a lot of fans appreciate it for that, and it's been getting a good reaction because of that as well, where it's like, hey, this isn't just another YouTube remix of The Shining. This is something new. Like, our goal was to make a new story out of that story. Like, it's a new storyline. There's, the Overlook Hotel is now Charbet's Chicken World, which is this big, ridiculous chicken resort and restaurant. And so yeah, it's this whole new story, and Jack Nicholson's still in it as himself, but everything around him is completely changed. So it's fun writing that way, because you're leaving some of the dialogue and then replacing the other half. So you're really making this awkward but hilarious new story out of something. And I think that kind of lends itself to the topic of this panel a lot with the genre bending, because we really took a horror film and made it into a comedy. We not only bent it, we, transformed it entirely. So it was kind of a fun exercise that way.
So then onto the theme of visual stylings. So Jen and Sylvia, in American Mary, one of the most striking visuals and characters is it Beatrice Johnson?
Beatrice Johnson, yeah.
Who is a stripper who has her face surgically augmented to look like Betty Boop. And can you talk about the inspiration for that? And also, I mean, that's such a kind of an incredible just visual style, and kind of like that's what people leave the film remembering, is that character. Can you talk about your choice of making that happen?
Well, thank you so much for saying that. That's a great compliment. When we were tackling American Mary, there's a lot of issues about beauty and what people see to be beautiful. It was very obvious to us that we were going to have a woman who looked like a Barbie doll. But then we were thinking, well, what else is there? What else is something that kind of pushed the envelope? And it was Betty Boop. Back in the 1920s, the board animators would have her dress pop down and dress pop up. She was a very unique looking person. And when you go into the world of body modification, these are people who don't want to look like anyone else, like a Barbie doll. They want to look very unique. And Jen and I are huge fans of any kind of body horror. And we loved watching 6 Feet Under, and we loved Masters Effects. And our goal was to get Masters Effects to do the prosthetics on this movie. And so we went in there, and they were much more experienced than us, and we were so green. And we're like, they're going to give us this much money. And they just smiled and was like, yeah, okay, sir, we'll figure that out. But they're amazing, because if Masters Effects hadn't believed in that project and hadn't done what they did, we wouldn't have the career that we have now. They went above and beyond, and I can't thank Todd Masters enough. He's the coolest guy. That's why you always see him and us collaborating together. There's a lot of talent in Canada, especially in Vancouver, and it's just really nice to be able to showcase
Toronto.
it.
You're in Toronto. Careful, careful.
Wait, I'm in Toronto right now?
It's freezing. Of course you're in Toronto right now. Another commentary we wanted, or at least a conversation we wanted to open up, was why is cosmetic surgery considered okay by everyone, and why is body modification the actions of someone who's not of sound mind? And I think that a huge factor in that is cosmetic surgery is kind of the American ideal of what is accepted as beautiful. When we created the Ruby Real Girl character, we thought, oh wow, this is going to be really jarring for people. People don't even realize that the actress that played Ruby, Paula Lindbergh, does not look like this. They just thought, oh, that's just some LA actress, Pop-Tart, that I've never seen.
Yeah, it was really awkward when we were at conventions in Los Angeles when there's women that had that much work, and they're like, Ruby's here too, and I'm like,
No, that's, but thank you.
Please
Thank
don't
you
say
for
that to her.
That's why we wanted to take the Betty Boop character, because seeing that literally translated was still jarring enough for people to say, oh, wow, that looks a little bit weird, but it's an American ideal of what's beautiful.
Yeah, And major props to Tristan Risk. We saw over 80 actresses between Vancouver and Los Angeles, and Tristan was originally just going to be the dance coordinator and choreographer. And we were so depressed. I was like, no, everybody misses a piece of this character. It's a very damaged woman who hides behind this cartoon persona to give her power in a very sexualized job that she has. And as soon as Tristan walked in, everyone was like, who is that? And instantly I was like, can you act? Because you have to audition for me tomorrow. And she's like, it won't be much dialogue. I'm like, no. And then 2 hours later, I'm like, okay, it's 12 pages, and I need a dance, and I need you to sing in a Betty Boop voice. Thank you so much.
And also, by the way, because you do burlesque, nobody wants you except us, so good luck.
Yeah. She came in and did a striptease to Baby Did a Bad, Bad Thing in a Betty Boop voice, handcuffed and blindfolded at 10 in the morning. And everyone was like, yep, that's the girl.
So my next question was going to be, why genre?
They won't take us anywhere else.
But I mean, that's the thing. It's genre is kind of a dirty word.
Yes.
But here, the things that we're talking about on this panel already, I mean, we're talking about the morality of beauty. We're talking about dependence of love. We're talking about, like, these people don't seem to understand that you can put a lot into genre. But it's often, can you talk about how, I mean, your work probably gets dismissed often because it's a torture porn gore film, but it's not. So can you discuss that?
Oh, constantly. We get that all the time. It's really interesting because sometimes people will want to hire us or get us into the room, but they've never seen any of our movies before. The worst case was when we had a meeting with Disney, and that was when American Mary was being made. And then they asked us the title of our first movie, and we had to say it was Dead Hooker in a Trunk, and it just went down from there. But the interesting thing about genre filmmaking, I mean, Jennifer and I grew up watching horror movies with my mom, so to me, it's girl time. And it's every time I watched a movie and I didn't understand it, she would explain it to me, and I felt smarter because she was making me smarter. Genre can tackle real-life issues without pandering to the audience like a drama. You can handle something in a horror, you can handle issues that everybody wants to talk about it, but it's in kind of a sneaky way where you're like, oh, I'm putting a message in, maybe you'll see it, maybe you won't. Yeah.
My example is nobody would watch 9 episodes of a show that was marketed as a guy having a midlife crisis dealing with his strange family going to see a shrink. But as soon as you introduce the idea that he's a mobster, you get The Sopranos, and people are like, yeah, the crocodile brain just said, yes, I want to watch violence. This guy might kill somebody in the episode, and he has that option is available. So I feel like it's just, it's like the possibility of the dial is at 11. And so people like these terms, like elevated genre. I don't really understand where the difference is, but I think maybe the possibilities of storytelling in genre, like I said, there's already a kind of like a decision and a handshake that's happened between the audience, between you and your audience, to say, this is the world in which I'm playing, and here's the preconceived notions, and I'm going back on all of this history that's already in your mind of all the movies you've watched, and then I can play with you. It's like going to, what game are we playing today? And so you, it's like being kids and saying, which game is it? And then how are we going to make it change?
You know all the rules. The audience knows it's a vampire, it's a werewolf, it's a full moon, it's a silver bullet, it's garlic. It's you know all those points. Now, kind of back to you guys, because you've traveled so much with your film. Can you talk about and this is why I kind of fight against genre being a dirty word, especially when it comes to Canadian films, is because these things travel. And I'm sorry, they're going to travel farther than sensitive dramas from our home country. And I mean, when American Mary got released in the UK, you guys had an amazing distributor and amazing publicist. Like, it was blowing up over there. Can you talk about the reaction that you see with your films overseas, or like just around the world?
Well, I will say we are a lot more successful outside of North America than here. Even with American Mary, people had to tell us, just so you know, people really like American Mary here, and I didn't realize that meant people camped outside our hotel and running against the car and hitting on the windows. I mean, honestly, Canada, that would be some nice treatment. But I will say that our film has traveled more than we have. I mean, we're huge in South America. We're huge in Japan, in Germany, in Italy, in the UK, in Australia. And everywhere that they torrent our films in Asia, which is all over, people love it, and people don't see it as, oh, you just make horror movies. I mean, there have been so many meetings I've had in Canada and the States where they say, oh, you're such nice girls. I'm sure you'll get, better movies in the future. And I love the movies that I'm doing. I haven't decided, oh, hey, horror movies seem marketable. Maybe I'll start making a few of those.
Yeah, we're not nice girls.
Also, I hate films that hit people over the head with their message. And unfortunately, a drama, as much as I love Oscar films, I know that I'm going to have to, have a coffee or a Red Bull to get through the 3 hours of this is why slavery is bad. I knew that before I came in, but just the way that it's displayed is just hard to swallow.
And then you have Tarantino with the 2 films he made with Hateful Eight and Django Unchained, and he's tackling those issues, but it's genre, and all of a sudden you don't feel like you're being preached at. You don't feel like you're in this horrible thing that's just soul-destroying, and you kind of get those kind of F-yeah moments where you're like, gosh, I wish that would actually happen, and it starts opening a dialogue, whether you like it or not. And the cool thing about auteurs like Tarantino is once you make a brand, you'll go into the theater and there'll be 12-year-olds to seniors, people that shouldn't even be into your rated R movies that are in there because they're excited about what you have. There's 2 different things you can do. You can be an auteur, which means talk about what you're doing to the studio a lot, because there's going to be some things they're not expecting from you. The second is a gun for hire. You are going to work lots if you're a gun for hire. If you can go through that and you can make movies and don't have to put your imprint on it, you'll be fine for a really long time. Unfortunately, Jennifer and I were born without that ability.
Without the ability to shut up, yeah.
Sorry, other panelists.
Yeah, sorry. So Laura, can you talk about your next project, which is going to be more into the horror genre?
Demonolatry.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting what you're talking about, being able to express something more. I have developing a horror comedy called Demonolatry. It's about the fear of commitment and facing off against demons, which I think we've all probably done. But the big thing for me for this one is it's not a parody at all. It's very much embracing horror and just finding the humor in the reality of the situation. And I think we're delving into the issues of relationships. How hard are they? What does it mean to commit to somebody for life, or supposed life if you're marrying somebody? And I think we're finding the humor in that through turning those metaphors into reality, turning the metaphors of those demons inside you into exterior demons that are attacking you. And I think it's giving us a chance to dig a little deeper. So I'm excited about it. I get really excited talking about it and exploring those things. And I think that's what excites me about doing genre blending. Is that what we're calling it? Genre blending.
Do you find it's easier to pitch a film which has got a kind of a theme like that when you're...
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, some people get it. Some people are on it and they're like, this is interesting. This is something I haven't seen before. I think I have a little help because of successes of like It Follows or Babadook, or things that have started going into more character-driven horror. Spring, which you introduced me to actually, which I loved. Demon also, that played at TIFF. Like those kinds of films have started opening up that world a bit more. So I think people are getting it more than they used to. And other people, I think, still get confused. They're like, I don't understand. It's a comedy. It's a horror. What does that mean? Who's your audience? I don't understand. So it's been a mix. It's kind of been a mix of it. Yeah.
Back to kind of international fan appreciation. So Nick, with the chickening, like that kind of opened a Pandora's box of festival travel after September, and you weren't really prepared for it.
No.
All the invitations started coming in, but can you talk about the places you went and what was the kind of the best reaction to the chickening, which I think I know the answer of?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the TIFF was pretty wild, actually, at Midnight Madness, especially since you played it a second time, and a lot of the fans had seen it already.
On the last night, because I thought the film was so fun and crazy, and also it's a type of film, if you don't know what it is, when it hits you, it's really
actually
unexpected.
People in the crowd, like, balking like chickens and roosters. It was pretty wild.
We
But-
played it on the last night, like we played it on the first night before Green Room, and then we played it on the last night before Final Girls. But we didn't tell anyone we were going to be playing it on the last night, so that kind of floored them.
But out of all, I went to Fantastic Fest in Austin. I went to Morbido Fest and in Mexico, and that was a particularly awesome festival. When back to the earlier questions you asked before, I think an important part of genre is just the audience, and I think it's one of those things where there's no rom-com festivals out there, and there's a ton of these genre festivals because the fans love it 1,000 times more than most other genres. It's like a really appreciated thing. And in Morbido Fest in Mexico, it was like this massive festival of super fans like I've never seen before. And it was a really awesome reaction because there was a very big old theater. And yeah, I think we got the most laughs in Mexico probably, for sure. It was it was pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah, I'll do it. Hey, I'm already in the works right now. I'm getting Meg Ryan. She's gonna host the whole thing. It's gonna be great. Yeah, totally.
I will also point out another thing to look online that Nick did is he remixed some of the federal election ads for Vice.
Yeah, we had Mulcair in his underwear. He kind of pissed his pants and turned to Satanism. It was they did really well, actually. I think they got something like 5 million views on Vice or something, so it kind of broke some records there and did well. So. And it might have got Trudeau elected, I'm not sure, but I had him shooting the head off of a Canadian goose. It was a little gruesome, but yeah, we brought the genre to the election somehow.
So on pitching, so for the Twisted Twins, what's it like pitching in Canada versus US?
I have had a lot more success pitching in the US, although sometimes no matter what you do, you're not going to get the job. For example, after American Mary, everybody wanted American Mary again. Less money, same actress, same story, a lot more safer. We had a monster script called Bob that we went shopping around. We've been shopping this around for the last 5 years. We get this meeting with these guys, and I'm pitching it. I got my storyboards, I got my model, my maquette, I got everything. My pitch is on point. Dude couldn't be more bored. And so having my idiot sister as my business partner, she looks around and she goes, "Hey, there's a taxidermied squirrel on your desk. What's that about?" And he looks over, he's like, "Oh, I'm so glad you asked. We're making this movie and it's called Squirrels 3D and it's awesome." And Jen looks at me and I'm the Lars von Trier. She's the Joss Whedon. I like political message. I like social commentary. She's the marketable one. I don't make money. Yeah, she sure does. And she goes, "Let me guess the tagline. Hang on to your nuts." And he goes, "Yes!" And she goes, "I wish I could see some test footage." He's like, "We got some." And I'm looking at her like, "Please stop talking. I want to get out of here. I need a drink." And she goes, "Let's see it." We start watching these visual effects of these squirrels. And she goes, "Wow, what are you going to do with it?" And he's like, "I'm so sorry. We already got a director attached." And she's like, "That's disappointing. However, if something happens to that director, please let me be your first call." 2 weeks later, we got a call. "Oh, I'm so sorry. Our director dropped out, and we love you guys to do it." And I look at her, I'm like, "Oh my God, I hope the script is something about the environment. There's a commentary in there." There's one point, I think page 47, I was like, "I'm out. I can't fix it." And I read the whole thing, and it didn't get much better.
Was it when the squirrel was described as the Dwayne Johnson of squirrels?
Yep, that was it. And humorously enough, one of the companies who helped put out another movie of mine messaged me, and they're like, "Yeah, what are we going to do next with you girls?" And I'm like, "I don't know, guys. I got nothing going on. I'd really like to make something with you." And they're like, "I'll be honest. I was disappointed by your last movie. I felt it was a step back of you creatively." I'm like, "Oh, I understand." He's like, "But don't worry, we got a script for you. I think it's perfect. It's called Squirrels 3D.
Were you about to drop the mic? Don't. We want to be invited back to Toronto. I will say, for anyone pitching, always come in with more than one idea and be brutally honest, because you don't want to get in a bad marriage. Because the worst thing you can do is read a script that's awful or have an idea that's just terrible and say, "Oh, yeah, I would do that." because it leads to divorce later on. I would say that by the time you're in there, there's a 50-50 shot that they already want you and a 50-50 shot that you're, in my case, a female director and they have to meet with at least one. And in my case, they meet two, right? I mean, the remakes, I mean, Hellraiser, Saw. If there was a talk of remaking it, you can bet the Soska sisters have come in just so they can say, what, but I met with them and I hated them.
I would say the biggest thing I could tell anybody who really wants to get into filmmaking is brand yourself. Make yourself undeniable. Most of the jobs I got was because somebody Googled me and saw that there was thousands and thousands of hits, and they're like, I don't know who you are, but maybe all these people seem to have something.
I'll also say the less I've cared going into a pitch, the better I've done. The ones I've really, really cared about, and I had storyboards and like test videos of what I want the things to look like, those never work out. When I come in and I'm already checking the phone and asking for a second coffee, those ones have been really successful.
It works for everyone differently.
Laura, how's it been when you've gone down to Los Angeles?
I don't know. We haven't done much of it, but everyone's been very open and receptive, and they'll always answer a call, and they'll always go and meet you. And the best thing that I learned was make sure that you make that meeting count so that they'll answer the call a second time. I haven't called the second time yet.
And Stephen, have you been getting interest after the short of like kind of pitches or?
Yeah,
or
I find it best to let Los Angeles come to you. Yeah. No. True story. Somebody saw the trailer on the TIFF website, and I got an email from a management company, and then they were like, "Let's have a coffee when we're in town. We're bringing up our Robert Redford movie and the closing night film," and then they said, "Please send us the film in advance of that meeting," and I sent them the film, and then the next morning I got a great email, beautiful email, and "Can we talk today, please, as soon as possible?" And did some research. Then a couple of days later, I signed with a management company down there whose aim was to introduce me to people who could make the feature version of O Negative, and so that's how that happened. And then I had a quite kind of like an incredible festival because I was also acting in the feature that I had just done prior to making the short. That was one of the reasons I did it. That also got into the festival. So I had that ride. I had the short first-time filmmaker ride, and I also had meetings every day with a variety of people, from like the people who made like Taken and to the people who made like Whiplash and Drive and all sorts of people in between. So, and I found those. I mean, I was, like just nervous and didn't know how that would be, and had this idea of what sort of a LA kind of meeting would be. And they, of course, they were all fantastic conversations and hour-long kind of get to know you, or who are you. They were never about like what's your product or what are you selling, which I kind of felt like I had to sort of have something to offer, and very rarely did. I mean, they would be like, "I love the film," and then they'd just ask about process or about inspiration or aims or who you're inspired by or what you're doing, or they'd be like, "I heard you have a band," like and vice versa. If I had time to do a bit of research, I would ask them about, why are they in this job, or what did they do before, what were they up to, or what did they dream of doing in the future, and so they ended up being great conversations, and now it all kind of hinges on on me sort of going back to the desk and being like, how do I write a feature film to kind of further those avenues. Basically, it's now sort of all on me to kind of go, when do I go back to Los Angeles to sort of continue all those coffees and Skype meetings. The Skype meetings kind of went on for months afterwards with just various people. And so.
Sorry, this one's better. I've come from the internet remix world where I just kind of do whatever I want by myself, and I'm not too dependent on other people for money. So now I'm kind of staring into the barrel of, hey, I want to do this legitimately and take licensed properties and actually trying to make something profitable instead of something that can swirl around in the film festival circuit and then die. And it's kind of hard staring a Warner Brothers executive in the face saying, yeah, I want to take something, one of their sacred cows and sort of, put funny hats on everybody and make
'Cause
everyone
you-
look ridiculous.
With the chickening, you kind of got the blessing from the studio where it's
We
like,
did.
it's okay, but you can't make money off of it.
Well, the big hurdle there was that the Kubrick estate would not want us to go near their property at all, let alone do what we did to it. So I think that was their big thing. And I think that kind of comes from possibly Room 237 and what that went down with that. There was a bit of a legal kerfuffle. So I don't know. It's one of those things. You got to pick the right film and you got to meet the right exec that's like, hey, yeah, take this film and go nuts on it and let's make something cool. It's going to take the right person and the right property, and I'm kind of on the hunt right now. So it's kind of a awkward and different kind of pitching process, but I'm excited about it, and having it been in TIFF and all these festivals and Sundance kind of, gives it some legitimacy. And I think we're going to launch the chickening online at Sundance. So we're hoping, share it so it gets millions of views, and hopefully they'll actually give us some money to do something for real.
Did you get, because you're going to Sundance, have people approached you about setting up meetings there? Have you been talking to
Yeah,
anybody?
I've got my calendar's full of stuff I can't even go to probably. Like there's lots of stuff. I mean, I'm kind of excited to talk to. I set up some things with people at Kickstarter because I really think this will lend itself as well. Like especially once we've kind of got the licensing down, it's like, hey, what films do people want to see, and get the public involved? It could be really cool. And I'm going to LA afterwards and having some meetings with Warner Brothers again to try and nag them into giving us something. So we'll see. But they are excited about it. It's just every film has, multiple owners, distributors, and everything like that. So it's like things are tied up with so many different people. It's kind of hard to unlock them in a
If
way.
you could have your way, what would be the one?
Well, I'm really kind of want to do The Sound of Music. I kind of started checking it out already, but just trying to find a clever name for it. We were thinking Anal Vice. But I don't know. It could be a torture device of some sort. I don't know. It'd be cool.
Do we have any questions from the audience? on that note. Yeah. Yeah. Any questions there? How do you follow that? Yeah. And we have mics, so you can talk into the mic. All right. Well, what's so right now you've got the game show going on in the States. What's next feature-wise for you guys, or what are you guys still trying to? And for the record, Squirrel still hasn't been made yet, so you could always.
I know. I'm.
Images online, people. Girls 3D, check it out, and it's 100% CGI. So don't worry, it looks
Awesome.
Yeah. Because zombie beavers went really far.
Zombie Beavers did go really. You know what? You have to love the genre to make a movie like that. The reason Piranha 3D worked is because the people who made it loved Piranha movies, and they're like, "There's gore and tits," and that's exactly what they served. No one was surprised. No one was trying to sell something else. There's in the next 3 weeks, if I didn't screw up the meeting I just had, it's going to be a very large movie that we're going to be doing. There's two features that we are attached to at the moment, which is very exciting. We started directing 10 years ago. We recently just presented, produced, co-wrote, and starred in a new filmmaker, Lisa Ovier's film, Puppet Killer. I'm tired of being a soundbite feminist. I always say, oh, indie filmmakers, ladies getting this, and I didn't do anything. I just promoted people and put a showcase on them. So I decided to actually go out in the mountains during Christmas and make this movie, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud as heck about that. My head's still swirling about that. The next month is going to be all in post-production, but it's amazing to see somebody living their dreams. And I remember when I first started, I knew so much less than nothing. So much less than nothing. I don't think it was until the third feature I was like, I think I'm retaining information now and moving forward. And I hope that becomes a trend. I hope that movie does really well. I hope that a lot of people who do have a little bit of success, like Jennifer and I, look at other filmmakers and are like, you know what? I'm going to help you do the same thing so we can have more of that. And especially in Canada, I think Canadians have such a cool, weird voice. Like, anybody who actually knows a Canadian knows we're totally messed up in the head. It's not this nice, like, please and thank you hockey sticks thing. We're weirder than the British humor and a little darker. And I would love for the world to see Canada as that. Not just to ruin our nice image, but, just to be like, we're as diverse as any country is. We're a patchwork of people. We let you come in with your weirdness, and you get to keep your weirdness and build more weirdness. Go ahead. Hail Canada. Yeah, or anal. Hey, man, I'm going to fund your thing. Do a Kickstarter. Anal Vice. Anal Vice by Nick.
Yeah, ditto. And if anyone has $5 million, I'm still looking to make Bob, so. All of you, thank you. No, I'm kidding. But let me just say, after this year, if it works out the way it looks like it's going to work out, I'll just pay for it myself next year. Breaking my producing rule of never putting your own money in a film.
You break every one of your rules.
Any questions? Yeah. Yep.
So I'm just curious about you guys as being Canadian filmmakers. Do you feel any responsibility to you as a Canadian director and your identity, and how does that influence your films or the way you write them?
Very much so. Jen and I like Robin Hood. We go to the States and bring it all back to Canada. Canadian crews, Canadian actors, maybe one or two American stars if they need that for their international sales. But I think Canada has so much talent. You go anywhere in the world and you just want to go back and shoot a movie in Vancouver. It's amazing what people can do.
Yeah, absolutely what she says. I think that it's really important to make films that no one watches and says, oh, they must have just made that in Canada on the cheap. One of the best compliments we got in American Mary was, first, women made that movie, and second, what's funny about that? And second, that was made in Canada. And, you know, American Mary itself could have been any town, USA. But that brought attention to, hey, Canada makes some cool effed up stuff. I censored myself. Oh, God, I'm so proud of myself.
I feel after the anal comment, we can say anything.
You ruined it all. I mean, I don't know how to divide it. I'm Canadian. This is like what I'm doing, so I don't know how I would react if I was American or something else. I think it's just inbred in me, and everything that I do is going to be somehow connected to the world that I grew up in.
Ditto.
Yeah, I'm kind of, like I said, I'm kind of new to the whole film world, but it's been kind of cool going to all these film festivals in the States and Mexico, and you know, we were in Sitges and stuff like that. And it's cool to kind of represent Canada, and because you become this ambassador, kind of, because a lot of the time you're the only Canadian film there, or something like that. And yeah, it's cool. And now I think, so I think, yeah, moving forward, now that I've kind of experienced that, I think it factors in more than it did before.
With the success of your short film, and while you were making it, you thought of making it into a feature, but then the decision to maybe go with the web series, and you said, I think you said it was, you could get smaller chunks of information or stories across in that format. What's that process of, like, when you go along with a project and changing those types of mediums of producing it?
I think what it comes down to is storytelling, and features versus TV versus web. It's all about length. It's not about story. It's not necessarily about storytelling. We had a story to tell, and it can, and we're kind of looking into all these different ways in terms of duration and how long that's going to take. But for us and where we were at, it just seemed like we did this short successfully. We can see and imagine, Jonathan could really imagine how that story could be expanded, but be told in these kind of chunks. But really, we launched it all at the same time. Most of the people that have watched it have binge watched the 8 episodes that are online. So in a way, they're kind of watching a feature film or a TV episode. Or the duration for me doesn't really matter. It's just how we ended up dividing it and putting it out into the world. And for us, that way made sense for us to do that, if that answers your question.
And you were really lucky to have a director who really understood this world that he wanted to bring. He
loves that world, that genre. It was something that he really embraced. It wasn't something new to him. It's something that he has been a party to for his whole life, as far as I know. I haven't known his whole life, but I think so. And so it helps a lot to have that. It wasn't him figuring out or discovering this world. It was him understanding that world and finding the best way to tell it.
And anyone else?
Thank you. You're all very interesting people, and thank you very much for this afternoon. This genre thing is kind of interesting. I understand why people work in genres. I understand genres. It's, it's boxes. But I was in a DGC event a few weeks ago, and there were distributors who were talking about the importance of genre. I also have a project too, and I've had a lot of response to it. And the response is, I don't know what genre this is. I don't fucking care what genre it is. Do you know what I mean? It's a story. It's a story with characters. And it's something that I'm sort of trying to deal with, I guess, in my own head is, why do we have to work in genres? Why do we have to put things in boxes? I don't know what my question is, but if you have anything
the world is run
to
by
say
marketing.
about that. What's that?
I think it's because the world is now run by marketing, and everyone wants to sell.
Well, of course it is, but we have to move beyond that. We have to create things. We have to create new. I guess that's what this is all about: blending genres, which I love that idea, and we have to sort of move away from things that people necessarily expect and give them something that they haven't expected.
I'm just going to talk as a producer for a second, which is
Sure.
just I think producing is a very creative thing, but there's also the very marketing, sell your product element to that. And I think when you're selling your film or your TV show or whatever it is, that you have to know who you're selling it to, know who's going to be eventually watching it, and find a way to pitch it that way. Maybe it doesn't fit into all those check boxes that they have, but I think that you kind of have to understand that it is a product that you're trying to sell, and just do your research and then be like, okay, this is how I'm going to sell this story to this person. Maybe there's an element to it that doesn't fit into that box, and maybe you don't emphasize that element when you're selling it in that way. And it
The
might
Martian was a comedy. I mean, they're blending genres all over the place.
It's about getting your story to your audience and how your audience is going to be able to find that story. As a festival programmer, I see films all the time where I'm like, you don't know who your audience is, and how is an audience ever going to find this film? As a director, with the help of a producer, you have to have that knowledge. You need to know where this is going.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you said that, because I agree. But looking back at my own kind of process of why I was doing this, like Nick, I was going, I make all these things. I make theater, I make music. How do I pay for life? And in a weird way, this was the sort of Trojan horse of me kind of going, if I'm going to go into the movie business, I want to tell something that's purely cinematic. My film just happens to have almost no dialogue, because I was like, that's what movies can do. They can be dreams. They can get into that level. But the fact that it was a vampire thing, as I found, like I said about the example of The Sopranos, kind of like just people go, they relax, whether or not there's the person looking at the poster, or and then you can sucker punch them from underneath. Like for me, that's what I found. But I understand your frustration, because I'm in those conversations with people all the time, and especially in Toronto, sometimes I find people are sort of obsessed with the idea of, well, what is the marketing plan behind this, rather than letting the marketing plan be inspired and be sort of used to open up the audience in a wider way. Anyone who was here for the Room panel listened to the guy talk about how much they needed to get past this notion that people were like, this is about a girl in a cage, instead of this is about surviving that experience and the love between. But in a way, they could have marketed like Silence of the Lambs. They could have gone a different way, but what they chose to do was to make sure that they would get a wider audience, they sort of looked at what the strengths of the movie were and tried to open it up, which I think is interesting on both sides.
And I think we've got time for one more question. Anyone else here? Yeah. We've got a mic for you here.
I'm reminded some years ago I went to some international film festival, and I believe that it was Orion Classics or the Michael Barker and his guys, and they told me how they managed to sell the Magnificent Seven to a Midwestern town by calling it a Western. So you guys ain't in it. I think that those guys have said, well, you need to exercise more creativity in marketing than you need in production. I mean, I at one point, I had working with me a guy who used to distribute for the National Film Board, and what they did. I was selling an independent American film in Canada, and what he did is he found which groups were interested in that theme. And what happened is, it had with, the film had to do with incest, okay? And the film, to my view, the film was very objective, and you couldn't tell whether the guy did it or not. But the film was shown to a very rabid feminist group, and they decided that the guy was guilty, and that the film was not marketed. The film was not marketed in Canada because it needed to have a base. And I think the world has, this was quite some time ago, the world has changed, quite a bit, but you still have to think awfully hard about finding that little niche. Finding, hey, they're mad about Westerns. Hey, this is a Western. This is an extreme, okay? But this is a true story. So you have to. These guys are probably the world's best marketers. So we have to learn from these guys.
Well, especially now because just the fact that the whole theatrical and distribution landscape has changed so drastically. I mean, here in Toronto, we're losing video stores every year. Okay, we've got Bay Street Video, that's left pretty much. We've got Suspect, that whole block is going to be gone. Suspect's probably going to be going in around a year. So if you like films and you want to watch films, especially Canadian films, where do you go? Curtis's Charm, great Canadian film. Can you get it on DVD? I don't think so. I think you can get it on VHS in one library, which still has VHS. So you guys are working with kind of like the odds stacked against you. Like, how do you make something, and then how do you let people know about it? I mean, it's getting harder and harder.
I kind of just trust that you're going to have a copy of it, and I'm going to watch it in the office. I think
You're lucky. You've got that access. But yeah, I mean, working as a theatrical promoter, getting people even just to the theater is the hardest thing, and it's getting harder all the time. Getting people to kind of wade through all this different selections that they have now online, and most of those selections are junk. It's just hard to get people to your story.
I think the coolest thing you can do, if you see a beautiful independent movie, become that billboard for that movie. Tell everyone. Be like a Breaking Bad fan. Annoy everyone in your life until they see it and then see how awesome it is. And then convert them into another billboard, especially with beautiful art house Canadian movies that as soon as you say that, distributors and theaters are like, I'm not going to show that. I'm going to show something with explosions for 2 hours. Thanks so much, though.
I would say totally utilize social media as well. The internet is still currently a place where we can have mostly free speech. I'm lucky to be on a game show, so I have a lot of attention for, things that matter to me. You can connect with your fans, you can speak to them, and each one of those people that you connect with, it takes a few seconds to tweet back to somebody. That person becomes a biological billboard, and they'll say, oh my God, I talked to the Soska sisters, and they're not really
A bad word that you can't say.
censored. They're not really censored, blink, but they actually talked back. They talked about what they thought of Hateful Eight. They talked about, this film that I never heard of. And you know what? You don't have to tell people to see Saw or something with $40 million in it. But something like Pontypool. Who's seen Pontypool? Shot here, nice. Yeah, you guys, that was an awesome movie. If we ever talk about films, Sylv and I just talk about the films that nobody's seen that everyone should see. And how can they see it? Well, I hope it's not just torrenting, because I don't know. We're running out of options to even see these films. Anything international or independent?
See The Battery as well. Jeremy Gardner deserves to make a sequel.
Yeah.
Did he just give you
The
a 20
Battery is
before you
amazing. It's
came?
as if Nick Cassavetes made a zombie film. So good.
Oh,
All right.
it's fantastic.
On that note, we're going to have to wrap up here, but I'd like to thank our genre blenders.
Yeah. So thank you to our panel, and thank you for being a great audience. If you're joining us for our last session on VR, please come back for 5:30 and take a break and enjoy and try out your own VR experience in our Samsung VR Lounge as well. So we'll see you back here.